Hello, this is Dolph Phelan. I'm the Director for Innovation and Technology at IRENA. And I would like to start this webinar, which is a progress report on the REmap 2030 and our plans to further develop this program. As you all know, on March 16-17, during the Energy Transition Dialogue in Berlin, we have launched the second edition of the global REmap. There was quite some press attention. We had two press conferences around that launch, and since there have been there's been a good uptake of the findings also in the written press, and we are currently going around the world in presenting these findings. Last week I attended the G20 preparatory meeting in China, and also there was a strong support for REmap as part of the toolkit for developing the renewable energy activities for G20. So we have prepared a number of slides, and I'm going to take you through slides that first explain a bit what are the key findings, and then we'll move into the next proposed steps. You can ask questions in between if you send them to us, and then at the end we'll come back to these questions and try to answer them. So 2015, last year, was a record year for renewables. We just launched the new statistics, capacity addition statistics. You can find them on our website. So 47 gigawatts of PV and 63 gigawatts of wind power were installed last year, which was a significant growth from the year before. And that despite of the record low fossil fuel prices. The investments also grew significantly, around 360 billion, and that is a number that includes large hydro. Part of that growth can be explained by the continued fall of the cost, which is illustrated by the results of various tenders. So a remarkable recent number was a solar PV tender in Peru, which saw $48 per megawatt hour. So that's a full $10 per megawatt hour lower than what we saw the year before in Dubai. And also for wind, a number of auctions for example, in Morocco and Peru, with prices between $30 and $38 per megawatt hour. So very low prices that are competitive even at today's fossil fuel prices. We see that the number of countries with renewable policies continues to grow, and it's near universal now. So it clearly all indicates an ongoing global energy transition. Now, the report we launched is a significant body of work. It is the full report is 170 pages, and there is, I think, a number of interesting insights. But at the high level, key messages, looking at the SDG 7, which calls for a significant acceleration of renewables. Conclusion from REmap is that that is perfectly feasible, and we think that up to a doubling of the share of renewables by 2030 is feasible, so which would take it to up to 36%. Then we looked at the economics of that transition, and we find that it's very attractive up to around 30% renewables, up to 36%. The savings still exceed the cost, but they are a little bit more balanced. But overall, for the whole package of REmap options, we see that the savings exceed the cost by a factor 4 to 15. So these are makes it that there is a very strong policy rationale. We looked at several types of savings. Of course, we looked at purely based on economics. And we found that around 60% of all the REmap options would be cost effective in 2030 without looking at any externalities. But then the other 40% would be cost effective if you consider health and climate benefits. So health benefits through reduced air pollution. And based on the REmap findings, we conclude that the contribution of renewables to global climate change mitigation has been significantly underestimated in a number of other studies. We think that the potential is on par with energy efficiency and should be given much more attention. And finally, we see the power sector as a very important sector for this transition, but it's clear that the power sector alone is not sufficient. And especially in the end-use sectors, so transport, buildings and industry, much more effort is needed and significant potential exists that is not yet fully mobilized. So in terms of the approach, we looked in detail at results for 40 countries, accounting for around 80% of global energy use. We looked what will happen with policies in place, and then we looked at what can we see as additional technology options based on best practice elsewhere, based on recent information from the private sector, etc. We stress that it's an options analysis and not a target setting exercise. So we looked into the economics of these options, and of course it's up to the countries to decide whether they want to take these countries up or not. And maybe we can move to the next slide. So we first looked at what will happen with policies in place. That's what we call the reference case. So in 2014, the share of renewables in total final energy consumption was around 18.4%. And we find that with policies in place, that would increase to 21% in 2030. So there is some increase, but a relatively limited increase. In terms of percentage, of course, at the same time in this period, overall energy demand grows significantly, so growth in absolute terms is more significant. But it's clear that 21% is not enough. Then we looked at what we call the REmap options, and we concluded that with these options the growth can be significantly accelerated and would take us to around 25% renewables. And if you combine that with the right policies for universal access and for energy efficiency, which are also part of the Sustainable Development Goal 7, then that 25% of these REmap options would take us in fact to 30% renewables. Now that is still not a doubling from the 18% where we started from. So we also thought of another category of options which we call the doubling options, which is much more thinking outside the box. For example, in that category there is early retirement of fossil fuel power plant. There is relocation of industry to places with better renewable energy resources. There is much more change in the transport sector, etc. included. So we think that such options could be feasible, but of course the costs are higher, and also the political challenge, the policy challenge to implement them is significantly greater. So with the REmap options, in absolute terms, the amount of renewable energy would grow from 69 exajoule in 2014 to 116 exajoule in 2030. And with the doubling options, it would grow to around 135 exajoule in 2030. That's what you see in the bars on the left. And in the pie charts on the right, you see the change in renewable energy deployment. So today, 3/4 of all renewables deployment is in heat and other direct uses, and the bulk of that is traditional biomass. If you look at the REmap 2030 mix, then the share of power generation increases very significantly from 2014, so 2014 19%, 2030 44%, and the share in transport also increases very significantly, while at the same time the share of heat and other direct uses declines to less than half. So this pie chart, lower right, shows that power sector, yes, is very important, accounts for 44% of the potential, but the majority of the renewables potential is still in the end-use sectors. So that is heat use in buildings and industry, and that is transport solutions. Now this complicated pie chart gives you a further breakdown, and it shows this REmap distribution, which I just discussed, in the center. And then the outside ring shows you the breakdown by technology and by type of resource. So the green area is bioenergy. So you see that bioenergy is very significant, accounts for around half of the renewable energy potential. But you can see that hydropower and that wind and solar are also important, and so the share of especially wind and solar increases significantly compared to 2014. Now, to put this set of options a little bit in perspective, we looked at quantitative growth from 2014 to 2030 with REmap options. And so what you see here is gigawatts in the power sector, 2014 and 2030. You see that for solar, the REmap options imply a 10-fold increase of solar, wind a 5-fold increase from 2014, and also in the end-use sectors you see significant change. The most dramatic one is for electric vehicles with a 200-fold increase, but also some of the other applications factor 4 to 6 increase, so very significant. And this is the most complicated graph I'll show you today. It's the cost supply curve for the world as a whole, and the different options are ranked here in order of increasing cost, and they are compared to their the fossil option that is being substituted in the reference case in terms of cost. So you see that the lowest cost option starts from less than $10 or more than $10 of savings per gigajoule. That is the yellow one at around 17% renewables on the x-axis. And the most expensive option we looked at reaches around $40 per gigajoule additional cost. So compare that with an oil price in the order of $10 to $20 per gigajoule. And so what you see here is that around 40%, 45% of the options are cost effective without any additional consideration of externality because they have negative cost. And you see, so that is up to around 24-25% renewables. And then from there to 36%, you see options with additional cost. But at the same time, these options have health benefits and have climate benefits. And so if you consider these, then the cost picture changes dramatically, and that is shown by these arrows with the different numbers. And you see that virtually all the options result then in cost savings if you consider these externalities. The outlook for renewables has dramatically changed because of the Paris Climate Agreement from December. So the countries agreed to limit global climate change significantly below 2 degrees. And in fact, that agreement will be ratified in the coming days in New York. And this graph shows what that agreement means for what it implies for the growth of renewables between now and 2050. And so you will need, there is some potential for nuclear and CCS. We recognize that, but we think that renewables must play a key role in decarbonizing energy supply. And you see that the REmap, if you express that in terms of primary energy renewables share, around 30% in 2030, is roughly in line with the 50 to 70% that we will need in 2050. And you see that if you compare that to other scenario studies that are out there, that some of the more green scenarios are in line with that, but some of the more traditional scenarios, including some of the IEA studies, are much lower and are not in line with that development. So that is, therefore we think that the role of renewables is still underestimated in a lot of these studies and needs to be revisited. The result for the share of renewables also very much depends on future energy demand, because even if the absolute amount of renewables grows, if energy demand grows at the same rate, there is no change in the percentage. So in absolute terms, in absolute terms, the renewables need to grow faster than energy demand to see a growth in the percentage. And another way to look at that is to map what different scenario studies assume for future primary energy supply and what they have as an outcome for renewables share. And what this analysis shows is that there is almost a linear relation. So the more optimistic a study is in terms of ability of the world as a whole to contain energy demand growth, also the higher is the share of renewables. So it clearly shows the important synergies between energy efficiency and renewable energy policy, because future energy demand is of course directly a function of GDP growth and the decoupling of GDP and energy demand, which is a function of structural change and technical energy efficiency measures. Now, looking at these global results, what is new in this REmap is that we really broke it down by country in what is the contribution of different countries and how would be the development in different countries to get to this global outcome. And what this map shows is the contribution of individual countries and regions to the overall global renewables deployment with the REmap options. And so you see that China alone accounts for 20% of the global renewables potential, the US 15%, the EU as a whole 14%, India 9%, Brazil 7% of the total. So, and you see also the percentages indicated of individual other countries. So you can already see that every country can contribute, but at the same time there are some countries and some regions that jump out that really must make a major contribution to get to this overall result. And we found that the potential for renewables deployment in 2030 varies widely from country to country. And the countries are ranked here in order of decreasing potential. And you see a potential that ranges from around 10% up to 90% renewables. And looking at the, let's start from the lower end on the right hand side. So you see it's mainly oil and gas producing countries, followed by a number of countries with limited resource potential, very high population densities if you like. While on the leftmost side of this graph is first of all Ethiopia, country with rapidly growing demand but with very good resources, especially for hydropower. And then you see a number of Scandinavian countries, Uruguay, Brazil, and then Kenya. So on the leftmost side of this graph, it's countries with a very good renewable resource compared to economic activity or population density. So the key point from the last graph is that you really need to look into the country specifics when you assess the renewables potential. And a global doubling does not mean a doubling for everyone, and a global aspirational objective of 30 or 36% does not mean that every country can realistically reach such a target, or otherwise there's a number of countries that can do even significantly more. Now this graph shows the renewable shares for power generation. So again, same approach. It shows ranking from highest percentage on the left, 100% for Ethiopia, to lowest percentage on the right, where is Iran, and it shows in blue starting point 2013, yellow what happens with policies in place, green with the REmap options added to it, and then in the hatched purple is how much more would be added with the doubling options. So if you like, you can also compare the yellow area with the green area. It gives you an indication of how ambitious are today's policy plans with what we think would be a realistic growth potential. And in some cases you see that the green area is much larger than the yellow area, so there is more possible than what's in the policy plans today. Now the There are various reasons to move into renewables. There are macroeconomic effects, distributional effects. There are energy security effects, climate change and health effects, and various other factors. And throughout the study, we have tried to quantify these different issues. Now, one measure for energy security is look at what happens to the energy mix, global energy mix in this case. So you see that renewables as a whole could become the most important form of energy deployed worldwide by 2030 if the REmap options are deployed. And the most savings would occur in terms of coal, which of course has important climate implications, but also significant reduction in terms of oil and natural gas use. In terms of climate, we conclude that the potential of renewables through these REmap options and the doubling options is on par with that of energy efficiency, and the combination of energy efficiency and renewables can put us on the pathway to limiting climate change significantly below 2 degrees. So that is a very important finding. So we looked at the cost and what we call the savings. Cost compared to the renewable and nuclear alternatives in the reference case. We looked at savings in terms of the air pollution benefits, indoor and outdoor air pollution, and the CO2 emission reductions and climate benefits. And so we conclude that the savings are somewhere between $1,200 and $1,400 billion in 2030. It's an enormous sum. Compare this to a global GDP of around 100 trillion today. So, the savings, even if you take the low end of the savings, exceed the costs by a factor of 4. So even in the most conservative case, this package of options makes sense. But so all of that will not happen by itself. There is a need for a significant acceleration of investments in renewables by a factor of 4 between 2015 and 2030. And that would take the investments to a level of around 1.3 trillion per year in 2030. So it's a very significant number, and of course that has important economic implications, labor implications, etc. So a significant potential, and based on this analysis we would recommend to seriously consider these findings. But it will not happen by itself. There is a need for a number of policy changes. There is a need to correct for market distortions and to create a level playing field. And at the same time reform power markets to allow much higher shares of variable renewables. There is a need for greater flexibility into energy systems, power systems, but for example also in terms of the way that biomass feedstock supply and use is interact, and there's a need for enabling grid investments. There's a need to consider electrification of end use and into what we call sector coupling, so use much higher amounts of variable renewable electricity for example, for electric vehicles, for heat pumps, etc. There's a need for more attention for renewable solutions in the built environment, in industry, and in transport. And finally, we find that bioenergy is half of the renewables potential, but we see that the bioenergy sector is not developing as well as some of the other renewables, and we think that especially sustainable, affordable, reliable biomass feedstock is key to really grow that sector. So that was a high-level overview of the findings. The work on REmap continues. It's part of the work program that was approved by the Assembly in January. We are currently working on a number of country and regional reports. We've just submitted a draft for Dominican Republic. We hope to complete soon the report for India. We had a workshop in Indonesia 2 weeks ago. Russia is ongoing, South Africa is starting now, and ASEAN, we had a first workshop last month. So all of this is progressing very well. At the same time, there's a number of sectoral deep dives. We are working with Utrecht University in the Netherlands on the synergies between renewables and energy efficiency, and we want to build energy efficiency also in our tools the same way as renewables are built, so that we can really study much better the synergies and joint policies in both areas. We have an ongoing study with the University of Geneva in Switzerland on how to accelerate renewables deployment through district heating and cooling systems. And finally, we're working on a transport roadmap, so looking at, of course, biofuels, but at the same time also electric vehicles and how electric vehicles can help to grow variable renewables, and at the same time how variable renewables in the power sector can fuel the transport sector through electric vehicles. We have a number of outreach events in countries. We've had a number of these events recently, and a number of additional events are planned for the coming weeks and months. But as we try to work on the outreach of these findings, if you see opportunities in your country, events where this could be presented, or you want to organize a dedicated event where we can present these findings, that would be very welcome. We continue to receive requests of additional countries to join the REmap, and there is a whole list now of countries where we have started that discussion, and there's a number of countries where we've had some initial discussions, but it needs to be a little bit further elaborated. So we will try to expand the country base. As I mentioned in the beginning, there is a strong interest now also from the G20 to support their renewables action plan through REmap, and that of course can have an important positive effect on the actual deployment of the findings. We have started work on a REmap information system to make the data much more easily accessible. A first result of that has been the tables of country results, which we have sent around. and which feedback we received is that that is indeed very welcome and allows a much better discussion of the key findings with the country. So we will further refine that and continue that type of reporting. And so apart from country studies, sectoral studies, the work for a new edition of the REmap will also start again soon. All these ongoing activities will feed into it, but the third edition of REmap is planned end 2017, early 2018. I should also stress that all this work, that the majority of the REmap work is funded through voluntary contributions and in-kind contributions. So the number of requests we're receiving now significantly exceeds what we can do with the resources we have right now. And so we're looking into ways how to actually resource this activity. Apart from voluntary contributions, which of course are always welcome, you might also consider the option of sending secondees to work on this program, because we have now a number of additional offices available thanks to the kind support of the German government, and so we could host a number of additional secondees in this field. This slide provides an overview of upcoming events where we will present REmap findings. So you see we have a lot of travel planned, and it's good to see that there is so much interest in the REmap. So today we're focused on this new global REmap report, but of course there is other important ongoing work of IRENA which is also related to REmap. You will recall the Renewable Energy Benefits report that was launched in January. There are new renewable energy capacity statistics that came out a few weeks ago. You can find them on the website. There's an important new study on cost reduction potentials for solar and wind technologies that will be launched next month at the time of the Council, and a number of other studies. And finally, I want to highlight the IRENA Innovation Week. The first IRENA Innovation Week will take place from 10 to 13 May next month here in Bonn. And the focus is on the age of power sector transformation. And we already have around 140 participants who have registered for this event, and it promises to be a very interesting exercise. So you can find information on the website, and I would encourage you, if you are interested, to join, to register soon, because we want to limit the number of participants to around 200. So this concludes the presentation on the main REmap findings and the plans for next steps. You may recall at the beginning of the presentation I asked for the additional the questions you could send. We have received a couple of questions. Some of them are specific to a number of the slides. So let me go back to these slides. Okay, so question on this slide was, or on this pie chart was, where are the electric vehicles here? In fact, that's a good question, and we've had a number of discussions on how to present electrification options in this pie chart. And in the end, we decided to, because you can show these options as renewables in the end-use sectors, or you can show it as renewables in the power sector. And in the end, we decided to show electric vehicles, heat pumps, and other forms of electrification as renewables in the power sector. So that's why you do not see a separate slice here on, for example, electric vehicles. But of course, in the report that is elaborated if you look at the section for transport sector. And a second question is here on this cost supply curve, and the comment is that the 1.4 cents per kilowatt hour additional cost is not negligible. Of course, we recognize that that is an additional cost, but we were thinking more in terms of the today's electricity prices for consumers. So if you look at, for example, the electricity price here in Germany, where we are located, right now it is around 30 US cents per kilowatt hour. And so if you look from that perspective, 1.4 cents is not that significant. At the same time, as we showed in some of the other slides, if you consider climate benefits and if you consider the health benefits, then these net additional costs change in fact into significant net savings. So that's another reason why we think that this makes economic sense. Then a question that relates a little bit to this graph. Question is, you showed the cost per technology and which technologies are particularly affordable. It's a little bit difficult to see because the font is small. But if you look at the lowest cost options here in this graph, then at the minus $10 per gigajoule on the y-axis, you see that solar thermal comes out as very attractive. Then various modern biogas cooking comes out well. There is various applications of hydropower in there, large hydropowers in there, some utility solar PV is in there, and then you can go through this list. We will make these slides available after the event, and in fact this graph is also in the report, so you can find that information there. There was a question how to engage more in the REmap program. I think I've touched upon that point at the end of my presentation. So the short term, we see opportunities. If you can point us to opportunities for outreach, we see that as an important way to bring this to the attention and to have a more in-depth discussion on how we can further grow this work in the coming months and years. And I mentioned this, either this VC model or a secondment model, both would be very welcome. So this concludes the questions we have received. If you have further questions, of course, you can always send us an email or contact us through other means. And if you will attend the council, then that REmap is on the agenda as a main item, and that will be another opportunity to discuss further. So this concludes this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you if there are certain parts of it you want to refer to, we will make this webinar available online. So thank you very much.